Hey everyone, and welcome back. We always say we love digging into the tech stuff that's actually making a difference in the business world.
Absolutely. It's about finding those practical applications that go beyond the hype.
Exactly. And that's what really intrigued us about the material you sent over on SAP Datasphere.
Intelligent lookups, right?
Yeah, intelligent lookups. It seems like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, using AI to clean up messy data.
It really does sound futuristic. But the core technology, fuzzy matching, has actually been around for a while.
Okay, so maybe not straight out of sci-fi, but still super interesting. Our main source here is an article from SAP Insider magazine by Dr. Marco Sisfontes-Monge.
He seems to be quite the expert in this field.
Yeah, definitely knows his stuff. And the way he explains intelligent lookups, it sounds like they could be a game changer for businesses dealing with data headaches. Mismatched data, inconsistent formats, all that fun stuff.
Oh, tell me about it. That's the bane of any data analyst's existence.
Right. So, today's deep dive mission: figure out how these intelligent lookups actually work. They rely on this thing called fuzzy matching, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is an AI technique for finding connections in data, even when things aren't perfectly aligned.
That's a great way to put it. It's like giving computers a bit of human intuition.
Okay, I like that. So instead of demanding exact matches, it's more about recognizing patterns and similarities, even if there are typos or variations.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a business with customer data coming from all sorts of different sources. Your website, physical stores, maybe even third-party vendors.
Oh yeah, that's a recipe for data chaos.
Absolutely. And trying to manually clean up all those inconsistencies would be a nightmare. But fuzzy matching can automate that process, saving time and reducing errors.
So how does it actually work? Does it analyze the text and look for keywords or something?
It's a bit more sophisticated than that. Fuzzy matching algorithms look at the overall structure and patterns within the text, taking into account things like the order of characters, the frequency of certain letters, and so on.
It's like teaching a computer to read between the lines of data.
In a sense, yes. It's about helping computers understand the context and meaning behind the data, even when there are variations in how it's presented.
This is where it gets really cool. Dr. Sisfontes-Monge actually compares fuzzy matching to all the buzz around generative AI. Could you explain that for us? What's the key difference?
Sure. Generative AI, or Gen AI as it's often called, is all about creating new content, things like AI-generated art or text. Think of it as teaching a computer to be an artist or a writer.
Right, like those AI image generators that are all over the internet now.
Exactly. But fuzzy matching is different. It's not about creating something new. It's about finding connections and patterns within data that already exists.
Oh, okay, I see the distinction. So it's not about generating new information. It's about uncovering the relationships that are already there, but maybe hidden beneath all those
You
inconsistencies.
got it. And that's what makes it so powerful for businesses. It's not just about cleaning up data. It's about revealing insights that would have been impossible to see otherwise.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But how does the system actually know which pieces of data are similar? Like Dr. Sisfontes Monge uses the example of different spellings of the word apple, 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 apple. How does the system know those are all basically the same thing?
It all comes down to this thing called the fuzzy score. It's essentially a metric that quantifies how similar two pieces of text are.
So a higher fuzzy score means the data is more likely to be a match, even with those variations.
Exactly. The system analyzes all those little details, the order of the letters, the number of matching characters, and so on, and crunches the numbers to come up with a score.
It's like giving the computer a superpower for spotting patterns that we humans might miss.
That's a good way to think about it. It's taking our human ability to recognize patterns and amplifying it with the speed and precision of a computer.
That's super cool. Now, Dr. Sisfontes Monge seems really excited about how SAP has simplified the use of fuzzy matching in Datasphere. He even walks through the process step by step in his article.
Yes, it's a far cry from the days of complex coding and command line interfaces. SAP has made it surprisingly user-friendly.
That's great to hear. So, no need to be a coding wizard to harness the power of fuzzy matching.
Nope. SAP Datasphere now offers a visual drag-and-drop interface for setting up intelligent lookups.
You just drag the data you want to compare, and the system takes care of the rest.
Well, almost. There are still some settings you need to configure, but it's much more intuitive than it used to be. For example, there's this thing called the match threshold.
Okay, I was wondering about that. What exactly does that control?
The match threshold determines how sensitive the system is to variations in the data.
So if you set a high threshold, the system will only match records that are almost identical.
Right. And if you set a lower threshold, it will allow for more variations, but you might also get more false positives.
It's a trade-off between accuracy and flexibility.
Exactly. And finding the right balance depends on your specific needs and the quality of your data.
So let's say you're a retailer comparing customer lists from different sources. If you set a high match threshold, you might miss some legitimate matches that have slight variations in the names or addresses.
But if you set the threshold too low, you might end up merging records that actually belong to different customers. It's a delicate balance.
It sounds like it takes some experimentation and fine-tuning to get it right.
It does. But the good news is that SAP has built in some helpful features to guide you through that process. For example, the system can actually learn from your feedback as you review the results.
Wait, really? The system learns from the user?
Yes, it's a form of machine learning. Every time you confirm or reject a potential match, you're essentially teaching the system what constitutes a good match within the context of your data.
So it's like having an AI assistant that gets smarter over time as you work with it.
Precisely. And that's what makes this technology so powerful. It's constantly evolving and adapting to your needs.
That's incredible. Now, we've spent a lot of time talking about how intelligent lookups and fuzzy matching work, but I want to bring it back to our listeners. Why should they care about all this? What's the real-world impact?
That's the key question, right? It's not just about the technology itself, it's about what you can do with it. And the answer is a lot.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, think about all the decisions businesses make that rely on having accurate, consolidated data.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah,
Things like marketing campaigns, customer segmentation, inventory management, all that stuff.
exactly. If your data is a mess, it's like trying to navigate with a blurry map. You might get somewhere eventually, but it's going to be a lot harder and you're likely to make some wrong turns along the way.
So intelligent lookups are like giving businesses a high-definition, GPS-guided map for their data.
That's a great analogy. It's about clarity, precision, and the ability to make informed decisions based on a complete and accurate picture of your data.
And that's something that every business can benefit from, regardless of their industry or size.
Absolutely. In today's data-driven world, the ability to make sense of your data is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity.
Okay, so to wrap up this part of our deep dive, fuzzy matching is a powerful AI technique that helps businesses connect the dots in their data, even when things are messy and inconsistent.
SAP Datasphere makes this technology accessible with a user-friendly interface that doesn't require a PhD in computer science.
And the result is that businesses can gain valuable insights, make better decisions, and ultimately achieve better outcomes. But that's just the beginning of our exploration.
We've only scratched the surface. There's a whole lot more to uncover about intelligent lookups and the power of fuzzy matching.
Stay tuned for the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some of the potential challenges and limitations of this technology. It's important to understand both the good and the bad, right?
Absolutely. Every technology has its trade-offs, and fuzzy matching is no exception. We'll dig into those in our next segment.
Can't wait. See you there. All right, so we're back, and we've been geeking out over this whole intelligent lookups thing. But before we get too carried away, I think it's important to, take a step back and be a little critical.
Absolutely. No technology is perfect, right?
Yeah.
And fuzzy matching, while impressive, definitely has its limitations.
Okay, so let's talk about those limitations. What are some things we should be aware of?
Well, one thing to remember is that fuzzy matching, it's not 100% foolproof. It can make mistakes, especially if the data is really messy.
Oh, so like those false positives and false negatives we always hear about with AI.
Exactly. The system might accidentally match records that shouldn't be matched, or conversely, mismatches that should have been made. It happens.
That makes sense. And I guess the accuracy depends a lot on the quality of the data you're feeding into the system.
Absolutely. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say. If you're starting with data that's riddled with errors and inconsistencies, even the best fuzzy matching algorithm is going to struggle.
So data cleansing and preparation are still crucial steps, even with this fancy AI at our disposal.
Oh, absolutely. You can't just throw any old data at the system and expect miracles.
Yeah.
You've got to lay a solid foundation first.
Now, Dr. Sisfantes Manji really emphasized how user-friendly SAP has made this whole fuzzy matching thing in Datasphere, but I'm still getting the sense that it requires some level of, technical know-how to really set things up properly.
Yeah, there's definitely still a learning curve. It's not quite as simple as clicking a button and letting the AI do its magic. You
Yeah.
still need to understand the different settings, the parameters, how to tweak things to get the best results.
So it's not something you can just hand off to like an intern with no training?
Probably not the best idea. But
No.
the good news is that SAP offers a lot of resources, tutorials, training materials to help users get up to speed.
Oh, okay. So there's support available if you need it.
Absolutely. It's all about empowering users to make the most of these tools.
And even with those resources, AI can still feel like a bit of a black box sometimes. You get the results, but you don't always know why the system made a particular match.
That's a valid concern. And it ties into this bigger conversation around explainable AI, which
Yeah.
is all about making AI systems more transparent and understandable.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about what the AI does, but how it does it.
Exactly. If we're going to trust AI to make important decisions, we need to be able to peek inside that black box and understand its reasoning.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. We've talked about the potential for errors, the need for expertise. Any other limitations or challenges we should be aware of?
Well, one thing to consider is the computational cost. Fuzzy matching can be pretty demanding on your system, especially when you're dealing with large data sets.
So it's not just the software cost. You also need to factor in the hardware and processing power required.
Right. You need to make sure your infrastructure can handle the load.
Huh.
Otherwise, those matching processes could take forever or even crash your system. Not a good look.
It's like buying a fancy sports car without checking if you have a garage big enough to park it in.
Uh-huh, exactly. It's about thinking holistically and making sure everything aligns.
So, to summarize this part of our deep dive, fuzzy matching, while powerful, isn't a silver bullet. There's a risk of errors, it requires some technical know-how, and it can be computationally expensive.
It's a lot like any powerful tool, really. You need to understand its capabilities and limitations in order to use it effectively.
But even with those caveats, I'm still pretty excited about the potential of this technology.
Me too. I think it has the power to transform how businesses work with data.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground already, but there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to
Oh,
explore.
I'm intrigued. What's that?
The bigger picture. What does all this mean for businesses, for society, for the future of work itself? That's what we'll be diving into in our final segment.
Can't wait to tackle those big questions. It's going to be a fascinating discussion.
Okay, so we've talked about the nuts and bolts of intelligent lookups. We've explored the potential pitfalls. And now I think it's time to zoom out a bit.
Like where you're going with this. Time for the big
Well,
picture.
exactly. AI is becoming more and more, well, everywhere, right? And I can't help but wonder, what does all this mean for the future?
Yeah, it's a question that's on a lot of people's minds these days.
Well-
And it's not just about the technology itself, but about how it's going to reshape our world.
Right, like what are the broader implications for businesses, for society, even for the future of work itself? Big stuff.
Definitely big stuff.
Right.
And I think one of the most significant shifts we're seeing is in how businesses view data.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, in the past, data was often seen as, just a byproduct of business processes, something to be stored away and maybe analyzed later. But now, data is increasingly being recognized as a valuable asset in its own right.
It's like data has become a new form of currency.
I think that's a great way to put it. And AI is the key to unlocking the value of that currency.
So are we talking about like AI replacing human jobs?
Not necessarily replacing, but definitely transforming. AI can automate a lot of those repetitive, data-heavy tasks that humans find tedious.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Nobody really enjoys spending hours cleaning up spreadsheets, right?
Exactly. And by freeing up humans from those mundane tasks, AI allows us to focus on more creative, strategic work.
So it's more about a shift in the types of jobs that will be available.
That's how I see it. It's not about AI versus humans. It's about humans and AI working together to achieve more than we ever could alone.
I like that. It's a partnership, not a competition.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important message to get across. AI is a tool, a powerful tool, but it's still a tool. And like any tool, it's up to us to use it wisely and ethically.
I think that's a great point. We can't just blindly embrace AI without thinking about the potential consequences.
Right. We need to have those tough conversations about responsible AI development, about bias in algorithms, about the ethical implications of these technologies. It's not something we can just ignore.
And I think it's important to remember that AI is still in its early stages. We're just starting to scratch the surface of what it can do.
It's true. What we're seeing today is just a glimpse of what's to come. Who knows what incredible breakthroughs are just around the corner?
It's both exciting and, honestly, a little bit daunting.
I get that. It's like standing on the edge of a new frontier.
Well, we've definitely covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the technical details of fuzzy matching to the broader implications of AI for the future.
It's been quite a journey.
And we couldn't have done it without you, our listeners. Thanks for sending in those thought-provoking questions and for joining us on this exploration of AI in the business world.
Absolutely. We always appreciate your curiosity and your engagement. It's what
Mhm.
keeps these deep dives so interesting.
And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more AI adventures. We've got a lot more exciting topics to explore in the weeks and months to come.
Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those questions coming. We're in this together.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.